Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the GM. It is your guy, Boulanger. Up next, fantasy trades for the Baltimore Ravens. Let's talk. Let me be super clear. I did say fantasy. These are trades that the Baltimore Ravens could legitimately make, but logically, they probably won't. But of course, it's so early in the off season, we have to find something to talk about that could generate conversation. When you think back over the 2024-2025 season, there were several positions that the Baltimore Ravens were vulnerable at. Offensively, you have to think left guard and right guard specifically. And then you also have to give some thought to the depth of the wide receiver room as it showed up big in the playoffs with Zay Flowers missing the playoff games. When you think defensively, there were several positions that left the Baltimore Ravens vulnerable throughout the entire season. Edge rush, interior linebacker, the safety room, specifically early on, and also the cornerback room. And so there is no way that you're going to address every one of those positions with any kind of significance. In free agency, a team just doesn't have that kind of money. But between free agency and the draft, you could absolutely upgrade and or create depth at all of those positions that I mentioned. So in this particular trade video, and there will be more maybe, we're going to address a few positions that I think are the most important. I typically will trade offensive players for offensive players or offensive players for picks. I'll trade defensive players for defensive players or defensive players for picks, but I don't like trading offense for defense only because if I trade an offensive player for a defensive player, I'm going to leave a hole somewhere and vice versa. So let's get into it. Our first trade may be a trade that half of you will like and love and the other half will hate because of your love for the player. So let's begin this trade conversation with Mark Andrews. Now let me be clear. My trade ideas for Mark Andrews have nothing to do with the divisional playoff game. Because if any of you have been with me for a length of time, you guys know that I've been talking about moving on from Mark Andrews way last offseason simply because his contract and his production didn't seem to match, for the most part because of injury. He did have a bounce back season. He did do some great things, but I believe in selling on a guy when he's high, not when he's low. Now, he did have a bad playoff game, so his stock may be a little bit down, but we're going to see if we can make a couple of trades. So my first trade is going to be Mark Andrews going to the Los Angeles Chargers, okay? And in return, this is player for picks, and in return, we're going to get a 3rd round pick and a 6th round pick. If the Chargers can get down with that, I think that's good compensation for Mark Andrews, a former all-pro level tight end. I think he will help out what we're trying to do in Los Angeles, and he knows that Greg Roman system inside and out. If the Chargers didn't want to do a 3rd and 6, I would absolutely take 2/4. I absolutely would, but it would have to be in the same year. I don't know about the compensatory stuff, but it would have to be in the same year. I don't want to wait a year to get compensation. I want my money, and I want it now, right? So that would be the first trade. I would trade Mark Andrews for a 3rd and a 6th, preferably. I would also trade Mark Andrews to the Seattle Seahawks, also for a 3rd round pick and also a 6th round pick. And again, I think that is absolutely great compensation for Mark Andrews. We get a 3rd, which will allow us to do some things in this draft, and we'll get a 6th, which will allow us to package some picks together and move up and get some higher draft capital if we so choose. And the biggest benefit is not just getting the draft capital, it's absolutely clearing up $11 million in cap space, which we absolutely need. That will almost immediately address a contract extension for Isaiah Likely, right? All 3 of our tight ends are free agents in 2026 offseason. And so we absolutely can't afford to get to the end of next season and not have one of those good tight ends under contract, and that preference is to Isaiah Likely. Because in truth, if you see them do something silly like extend Mark Andrews this season, that probably spells the end for Isaiah Likely. Okay, so those are my 2 trades for Mark Andrews for for draft compensation. And of course, there's other teams that would like to have Mark Andrews. A team like the Carolina Panthers, who have been looking for a tight end since Greg Olsen retired. They absolutely may do a 3rd and a 6th round pick. A team like the New Orleans Saints could probably stand an upgrade at tight end. I mean, there's a whole host of teams. The Green Bay Packers could stand to upgrade the tight end room. The Chicago Bears could stand to upgrade the tight end room. Those are my 2 preferences, just to help out Mark Andrews, because he has familiarity with Greg Roman and familiarity with Mike McDonald. But any of those teams who want to give a 3rd and 6th for Mark Andrews, I absolutely would take it. All right, let me sweeten the deal a little bit, because I got a player trade. The first player trade I have is trading, again, Mark Andrews and a 3rd round pick. I would go as high as a 2nd round pick for DK Metcalf. I think that DK Metcalf could be on the move this offseason for a couple of different reasons. Number one, it is clear that Jackson Njigba has taken over as the number 1, with DK Metcalf being more like a 1B. And I don't know if Seattle is going to continue to pay his high salary if they can go with the younger, cheaper option and save, a ton of cap space, between 18 and $20 million in cap space with a trade. The reason why I like this trade is because DK Metcalf is a 6'4", 225-pound monster at the wide receiver position. He tried out for the Olympics a couple of seasons ago, which probably means he still runs in that 4.3 area. He's only 28 years old, so he's a little younger than Mark Andrews. And I think that he would be an absolute great addition to our offense, specifically on the outside. If a team traded straight up for a DK Metcalf, they're probably going to have to give up a 2nd, a 3rd, and maybe a 5th to get him. But I think because we are going to include Mark Andrews and a 3rd, again, as high as a 2nd, I would absolutely do that deal. And him coming in, he has a $31 million cap hit or cap number this season. His base salary is $18 million, which means he probably only cost the difference between the Mark Andrews savings and DK Metcalf coming in. He's only going to really cost us about $7 million in cap money. I think that's an absolute great deal. And then the Baltimore Ravens could work on an extension. I've already did the numbers. You can go check yourself. What I'm telling you is absolutely correct. And I'm even feeling even better about Mark Andrews and a 2nd. In fact, if we had to go up that high. And here's why, right? The tight end room is the strongest room as far as top end talent and depth on the whole roster, okay? And I'm not just trying to throw away Mark Andrews, but I'm trying to strengthen a position that has been habitually thin in Baltimore. When you look at what the Baltimore Ravens have in-house right now and have had, we have the cheapest wide receiver room in the entire league. And if Lamar Jackson can do what he did last year with the wide receivers who are not bad at all, but if he could do that with those wide receivers, adding a DK Metcalf, a guy who is a true deep threat, a big-bodied wide receiver who can do everything you need him to do on the field, and he's still young, I think is an upgrade that would be worth sacrificing Mark Andrews for. All right. So you guys let me know what you think about that trade, Mark Andrews, and now I'm upgrading it to a 2nd round pick for DK Metcalf. Okay. And if it's Mark Andrews, a 2nd and a 5th for DK Metcalf and a 6th, I'm willing to do that as well. I'm in on this trade. I do think somebody could get DK Metcalf. You're going to see this offseason a lot of your big name wide receivers be on the move, as we've heard about Deebo Samuel, we've heard about Cooper Kupp. Although those guys have had injuries, I think they still could be solid additions to a new team. You even heard rumors about AJ Brown being on the move because of his level of disgruntledness out in Philadelphia. Winning a championship may fix that, but I wouldn't put it past Philadelphia. Howie Roseman is that kind of GM who will take a guy who's high, as far as his value, and flip him and just take that draft capital and restock the team. So all of those guys could absolutely be on the move this offseason, right? Another trade that I would consider is Mark Andrews going to Los Angeles for Cooper Kupp and a fifth. Now, I'm going Mark Andrews for Cooper Kupp. Why? Because Mark Andrews is the younger player, but I need Cooper Kupp because of his salary, and I need a fifth round pick as they sweeten the deal, because it's very, very clear they've been trying to get off Cooper Kupp for a number of years. Cooper Kupp is 6'2", a little over 200 pounds. He has elite hands, even though he has some injury concerns, but he would absolutely step in and be an upgrade at the number 2 spot, and maybe even a step down at the number 3 spot. But he would instantly upgrade our wide receiver room for sure. And again, our tight end room would still be strong, because you got to remember, this is fantasy week. So even after these fantasy trades are made, we still can operate in the draft from a fantasy perspective. I would also consider Mark Andrews probably going somewhere like, I would consider Mark Andrews to Chicago for DJ Moore. DJ Moore gets lost in the shuffle of good to great wide receivers, but he's had trash quarterbacks for some time now. And I'm not saying Caleb Williams is trash. I'm just saying he's never really played with a top-notch quarterback. And coming to Baltimore will give him that opportunity. So Mark Andrews to Chicago for DJ Moore. We would probably have to add a 4th round pick to get DJ Moore, maybe a 4th and a 7th, or a 4th and a 6th. But I still think it's worth it. He could absolutely line up at any of the wide receiver positions and be a super upgrade to what we have going on at wide receiver. So those would be the trades, man. I didn't go crazy like Mark Andrews for Justin Jefferson. He's not on the move. I didn't go Mark Andrews for Mike Evans. He's not on the move, right? There's no options for that. So I wanted to do fantasy, but I wanted to be logical, because I think the 3 or 4 wide receivers that I did mention, I think that they absolutely could be on the move. I did not make a Mark Andrews, Deebo Samuels trade, only because San Francisco already has a tight end in-house. He's a little older than Mark Andrews, but he's just as good, maybe better. Depending on who you're asking. And I think we could get Deebo Samuel if we really want to trade for him, just with some low-end draft capital, because San Francisco is probably trying to make room for the Brandon Ayuk contract and the ascension of Ricky Pearsall. So I think we could absolutely get a Deebo Samuel. And with any of these trades, right, there's always going to be an injury concern. There's an injury concern with Cooper Kupp, injury concern with Deebo Samuel if that happens, and a slight injury concern with DK Metcalf, but not as much. DJ Moore has never really had injuries. He's been consistently healthy. So I think, again, all of those guys I would be interested in adding to the Baltimore Ravens. All right, let's jump to another player who could be on the move. I've definitely heard some trade rumors around Marlon Humphrey. Early on, when our offseason started, before the playoffs had even ended, there was a conversation of could the Los Angeles Rams trade for Marlon Humphrey, which is super, super interesting. I never even seen a link between those two, Marlon Humphrey and the Rams, but let's talk about that. Would you guys be willing to trade Marlon Humphrey for Cooper Kupp? I don't know. Like I said, I don't typically trade offensive for defensive players and vice versa. But I guess trading Marlon Humphrey would save $18 million in cap space, which would cover Cooper Kupp's salary. So maybe, but then you open up a hole at slot corner and you have to fill that in with someone, unless we think we can pull off what the Philadelphia Eagles did and draft some rookies to fill those vacant cornerback positions. You could also trade Marlon Humphrey for a Deebo Samuel. The money absolutely works out the same way, with Marlon Humphrey having $18 million cap savings. Personally, I would probably, as hard as I've been on Marlon Humphrey, I would probably keep Marlon Humphrey and just extend him, get that cap number down, and still only do a 3-year deal with all the money paid out at the end of 2 years. So that's probably more likely what I can see happening, but you guys let me know what you think. I like the Mark Andrews trades a lot better. Let me give you one more trade. I think the other position that I think is super vulnerable besides wide receiver is going to be edge. And we all know that there was a link between, or at least some rumors from the Ravens to Max Crosby. And here's the truth, man. Nobody ever said Max Crosby was really on the market. But typically where there's smoke, there is a little bit of fire. And I wonder would the Raiders go for this deal right here. I'm willing to take Odafe Oweh. I think he has like a $13-14 million salary this season, which is his 5th-year option. I'm willing to take Odafe Oweh, a second in 2025 and a second in 2024, and trade all of that for Max Crosby. Let me be clear. That sounds like a lot for Max Crosby, but it's really not. He's only 27 years old. He's consistently a dominant pass rush. He makes everybody up front with him better. He makes his back side, meaning his linebacking group and his cornerbacks better. And he's healthy. It has been basically all his career. And I think that he would be the kind of edge rusher that we need to get over the hump. And here's why. Here's why I would do this trade. Tavius Robinson is just a younger version. You've heard me say this before, but Robinson is a younger version of Odafe Oweh. They're not really going to dominate you with just off the ball explosion and get into the quarterback, but they're going to play solid against the run. They're going to be able to set the edge. And really what we need is not another edge setter. We need a dominant level pass rusher. I think that Odafe in 2 seconds absolutely could get that deal done. Odafe's $14 million contract will be offset or would offset the money coming in from Max Crosby. He would have to have an extension, but I think he's the type of guy that you would extend for sure. And our front would look a lot better and be a lot more effective against opposing QBs. And then we can address depth in the draft if we need to. I mean, because we still would have Tavius Robinson, Adisa Isaac, which we don't know what he's going to be, David Ajabo, which we don't know what he's going to be, and of course Kyle Van Noy. So it's definitely room for an upgrade if we pull that kind of trade off. So let me know what you guys think about the Odafe Oweh for Max Crosby. I don't think a Myles Garrett trade is realistic, only because you're probably going to have to give up 2 firsts and some players in order to get him, and they would never trade him inside the division. I'm going to tell you a scary thought, because I've heard some rumors, as I've been, just looking at other media outlets and things of that nature, and there has been a rumored link to the Philadelphia Eagles being able to pull off a Myles Garrett trade. Do you know how scary that would be? You got Josh Sweat, who's a free agent. You got Zach Bond, who's a free agent. Those guys are going to make more money and they might not pay either one of those guys. But if they got a guy like Myles Garrett to add to that defensive front, and Philadelphia is the type of team that would pull it off, because Philadelphia for the next 2 or 3 years are going to be drafting in that bottom 3 to 4 of the draft. And when you get a transcendent talent like a Myles Garrett, and all you had to give up was a couple of low-end first-round picks, Philadelphia is the type of team that would do that, because they don't really have any money invested in their defense anyway. Now, they will at some point, but they don't have right now. And so I'm trying to think around the league of another. I don't want Nick Bosa. He's been injured a lot lately. He's still a good pass rusher, but been injured a lot. I don't want Joey Bosa. I can't think of anybody. So you guys let me know what other top-notch pass rusher pass rusher that you would be willing to trade Odafe and some capital for, some draft capital for, to get him in house. So those are my fantasy trades. Let me know what you like. Let me revisit them. Mark Andrews for DK Metcalf. Mark Andrews for maybe a Cooper Kupp. Marlon Humphrey for maybe a Cooper Kupp or Deebo Samuel. Odafe Owe, and some draft capital for a guy like a Max Crosby. So let me know what you guys want me to know. I'm your guy Boulanger. This is the GM, and I'm out.